My name is Keith Fritz. I'm the president of Safety First Valve, and today I'm going to discuss our line of sanitary pressure and vacuum relief products. We will start today by discussing our Quick Clean sanitary relief valve. This product was developed in conjunction with several major pharmaceutical manufacturers' input. They were looking for a true line of sanitary pressure relief products that could be easily cleaned, sterilized, and put back into service without having to send the valve out to a repair facility and be down for any extended period of time. As you can see, this is the inlet of the pressure relief valve. It is a flush mounted product. It's no dead leg whatsoever in the valve. Your sanitary gasket will enter this groove here and match up with the mating end of your piping system. There are 5 major components to the valve: the valve body, a valve seat that utilizes an O-ring seal. We have a stainless steel spring. Typically that is a 17/7 stainless material. Occasionally we will use a 302 or an Inconel for higher temperature applications. A spring guide and a retainer that holds all the parts together. If you look at the outlet of the valve, you have pins that coincide with the grooves in the retainer. We also use a set screw that helps us adjust the valve, and a secondary locking screw that goes into the side of the retainer so that the valve cannot be tampered with once it's set. So once we install the elastomer into the seat, that's the part that goes into the valve first. Make sure that it clears the pins. That can be accomplished by just cocking it to the side and allowing the seat to drop to the bottom. And as you can see, once again, there's no room for any bacteria or material to get inside of the valve because of the flush mount design and the elastomer that helps seal the valve. The next item that will go in is the spring, followed by the spring guide, and then we thread the set screw into the retainer. And then we'll go ahead and start to thread the locking screw into the retainer as well, but we don't fully lock that in until the valve has been tested and certified. And then you simply just press down 1/4 of an inch and make a third turn until the pin matches up with the groove, and then let the pressure off of the tension off of the retainer and allow the spring to spring back up. So from there we would put this on our test stand, test it on either liquid or CO2 using a digital gauge that has been calibrated every 3 months. And then once the valve is set, we come back in and then we would thread the locking screw all the way in. That valve would now be set. Once it arrives at your facility, if you feel like you've had a process upset and you want to pull the valve out of service to either bench test it or to clean it, you would just reverse the process, with the exception of adjusting the set screw or the locking screw. And this is called the Quick Clean valve because now all we have to do is press it down, make that third turn, and then all the components easily are disassembled. And the beauty of the product is you can reassemble it, and because we have not made any adjustments to the retainer or the set screw, it easily goes back into place and you're back in service within minutes. It's CIP capable. Once again, your spray ball would enter here and spray all this surface area here. If you had a system where you could overpressure this, then the seat would lift and you would be able to. Now we'll discuss our sanitary vacuum breaker. As you can see, it's a little bit longer. That gives us a few more options when it comes to the springs. These are both 1.5 inch tri-clamp connections. This is actually a little bit older model than we're selling now, but we're selling so many vacuum breakers I can't really keep them in stock. Once again, there's going to be 5 major components to this vacuum breaker. The vacuum breaker body. The larger end is now your inlet. This is where your air comes into the vacuum breaker. That would be the outlet that's flush mounted with your tank. We have the pallet, which would insert into the outlet, and it moves towards the process as it senses vacuum. We have a spring guide. The pallet and the spring guide in our new design are now a single unit that the pallet floats. We've cut a groove here and then inserted a pin into the stem on the pallet and make that one unit, so the pallet moves freely and independently of the spring guide, yet they're one unit. Once again, we use a retainer to hold the parts together, a spring, once again this is stainless steel as well, and then adjusting screw and locking screw on that as well. To start our assembly process for the vacuum breaker, our grooves on our retainer now face the opposite directions. They face down towards the outlet of the vacuum breaker. There's no threads located in the center of this, but there are threads in the spring guide. So we would insert the adjusting screw through the retainer and then thread it down into the spring guide. And then we come back with our set screw and go ahead and thread it into the side of the retainer. Then we take our stainless steel spring and we're going to wind it around this stem here, inserting it from the bottom first, and you may need a small flathead screwdriver to start the spring, because that first coil is tight to the second spring. Thread it up, and then we're going to drop the retainer and spring guide assembly through to the outlet of the vacuum breaker, where the spring guide and the spring are actually passing through the outlet. And then once again there's a stem that runs perpendicular to the pallet stem, and we're going to wrap that spring once again around the perpendicular stem. And I'll mention that the spring has already been cut to length, the appropriate length for this size vacuum breaker. We have a chart to let us know at removing how many coils will get us to the appropriate set pressure. And then there's guide pins on the pallet that correspond with guide pins that have been drilled through the vacuum breaker body. I line those up, and then I need to make sure I have enough clearance there, so I don't want the grooves lined up with the pins yet until I pull this spring and the spring guide through the outlet, or the inlet of the vacuum breaker, and then I make a third turn, and now all the tension is on the spring and the retainer is holding the tension on the spring by lining up with those grooves, because it's above the grooves now. So this outlet of the vacuum breaker would once again line up with your mating pipe flange. All your pressure, your air, is going to enter the vacuum breaker from this larger end. This is nice smooth finish. These have been passivated and electropolished to an RA20 finish, so everything here can be cleaned with a spray ball and you don't have to worry about contamination inside of the vacuum breaker. Once again, to disassemble the vacuum breaker, you would just pull up slightly on the spring guide and the retainer, make a third turn, and all the components would drop down, and then you would thread the pallet off, and that would allow you to pull the retainer and the spring guide and spring back up through the inlet of the vacuum breaker. And then these products come preset at the factory, so if you want a valve set at 5 psi, it will come from the factory at 5 psi, plus or minus 5% is our standard. Same thing with the vacuum breaker. We can get down to 1-inch water column in this design. It comes preset from the factory. We've tried to eliminate the possibility of tampering with the vacuum breaker by putting the locking screws into place shortly. If you do have any questions, please contact either CSK Bio, our rep in Singapore, or feel free to contact Safety First Direct. Thank you.